Let me introduce you to the biggest failure in the entire Magical Knight Academy. His name is Ikki Kurogane, and if you looked up pathetic loser in the dictionary, you would probably find his yearbook photo. This guy is an F-rank knight in a world where everyone else is at least D. He's the kind of student teachers forget exist, the kind of fighter no one wants on their team, and the kind of protagonist who makes you wonder if the universe is just playing a sick joke. The story opens with Ikki getting ready to go train, because of course he's training. That's all this loser does, trying desperately to prove that hard work can beat natural talent. Meanwhile, the news is blaring on his TV about Princess Stella Vermillion, who just enrolled at Hagun Academy with the highest entrance score in history. She's an A-rank knight, a prodigy, a princess, and basically everything Ikki will never be. He turns off the TV and reflects on how people believe life is unfair, that what you're born with determines how far you can go. This mindset divides society between the talented and the talentless, creating an absolute hierarchy where those without gifts can never surpass those with them. They're forced to abandon their dreams. But Ikki asks himself, does it really have to be this way? We flash back to his childhood, training with his grandfather. The old man tells him he should feel frustrated by being weaker, but he should hold on to that feeling, because that frustration is proof that he still needs to defeat himself. Back in the present, Ikki arrives at his residence and summons his sword. He calls it Intetsu. People who can manifest their souls as weapons are known as blazers, and those recognized by the national organization receive the title of Magic Knight. That's exactly what he wants to achieve. He returns to his apartment and notices a pair of women's boots at the entrance. Red flag number 1. He walks into his room and finds Princess Stella wearing nothing but her underwear. Before she can say anything, he tries to explain, claiming he didn't see anything. Then he suggests they both stay in their underwear since they'd be in the same condition. Because that's the smooth brain move of a guy who clearly never learned how to talk to women. Stella loses her patience and slaps him so hard you can practically feel it through the screen. We cut to the academy, one of the most prestigious knight academies in Japan, famous for always winning the 7 Stars Sword Art Festival, but their recent results have been disappointing. A new director has taken over, and now Ikki is standing in front of the princess with the slap mark still on his face, being demanded to take responsibility as a gentleman. He apologizes and says he didn't mean to see her changing. Stella says she'll only forgive him if he commits harakiri. You know, just a small ritual suicide to restore honor. No big deal. Ikki asks if she's serious because he's not about to lose his life over something so trivial. Suddenly the director appears, wishing the protagonist good luck. Stella, even more irritated, manifests her fire magic. Ikki backs off and ends up confessing that he couldn't look away because he thought she was really beautiful. The comment leaves the princess extremely embarrassed, and the fire sprinklers activate, soaking her completely. Taking advantage of the moment, Ikki explains that this room is actually his. Stella gets furious again, believing he's just making excuses to invade her space. Then the director returns and reveals that from now on they'll be sharing the same quarters. He shows their badges as proof. Ikki questions how an A-rank knight can share a room with an F-rank. The director replies that this extreme difference makes them ideal partners. Stella hates the idea, but the director says if she disagrees, she can leave the academy. With no alternative, she accepts but imposes absurd rules. He can't talk to her, can't open his eyes, can't even breathe. When he asks for permission to at least breathe through his mouth, she denies it, saying even the air would be a nuisance. The director suggests a night battle where the loser will obey the winner's orders. They both agree. Stella says not even in his dreams could an F-rank knight defeat an A-rank. But Ikki replies that he trusts his training and that the result of a battle can never be predicted before it happens. Stella adds that this isn't just a simple dispute anymore. The loser must obey the winner for the rest of their lives, no matter how humiliating. As she prepares for the confrontation, Stella remembers her goal. Her country is small and she needs to become stronger at any cost. So she'll fight with everything she has. The whole academy is already talking about the duel, wondering why someone with a comfortable life would accept such a fight. Later, Ikki waits on the battlefield. The director is surprised he accepted the challenge, and Ikki replies that sooner or later he'd have to face her to achieve his goal, winning the 7 Stars Sword Art Festival, the condition imposed for him to graduate. As a gentleman, Stella arrives at the battlefield and comments that she heard the academy doesn't allow him to attend combat classes because he doesn't fit the official magic statistics. So she suggests he give up on becoming a magic knight. But Ikki says he's not backing down from the duel. Stella asks if he really believes that effort and hard work can overcome even the most extraordinary talents. Ikki replies that he wants to believe that's possible. Hearing this, Stella reflects on her own past. She was always labeled as naturally talented, without people recognizing the constant effort she made to become stronger. The director explains that the fight will be a simulated battle. Although the attacks won't cause real damage due to the technology used, they can both fight at full strength. As the battle begins, begins, each of them summons their weapon and prepares for the confrontation. Stella charges forward, but soon realizes that Ikki manages to dodge all her attacks, despite being classified as F rank. Irritated, she provokes him, demanding he stop running away, but she notices that Ikki can anticipate her movements. She tries to trick him with fake attacks, but realizes her movements seem slow before his eyes, which deeply impresses her. Deciding not to underestimate him, Stella starts using her true magical power. In response, Ikki also reveals his true strength. Unable to keep up with his movements, Stella ends up being defeated by Ikki's Itu Shura technique. He emerges as the winner, but due to exhaustion caused by his limited magical power, he passes out. Stella also loses consciousness. Later, we see Stella in the hospital, where she confesses to the director that she had forgotten what it felt like to lose, something she hadn't experienced in many years. She asks about the protagonist's condition. The director explains that he's resting because he can only execute one magic attack per day. Stella asks how someone of F rank managed to defeat her, and mainly why he still has that classification. The director clarifies that knights are evaluated exclusively based on their magical power, not on their combat abilities or technique. That's why Ikki suffered countless injustices but had to rely only on himself and persevere to become stronger. In a scene change, Stella goes to the room and finds the protagonist sleeping in bed. At that moment, she notices his superiority. His shirt is lifted and she takes the opportunity to observe his muscles. Although she hesitates, she concludes that he owes her this favor since she saw her in her underwear before. As she touches his body, her hand gets stuck under his arm, leaving her embarrassed. Trying to free herself, she ends up sitting on top of him. When she finally breaks free, she tries to touch his abdominal muscles, but feels an overwhelming force emanating from his body. Suddenly, the protagonist wakes up and asks what she's doing on top of him. Startled, Stella abruptly stands up and hits her head on the ceiling, leaving a visible bump on her forehead. She apologizes for having underestimated him, and acknowledges that she was also labeled as talented only by luck. She admits she regrets judging him that way, remembering what happened in the battle. Ikki asks if the apology is sincere, and Stella confirms she was speaking figuratively. He comments that it's a shame that royalty doesn't always keep their promises, and she replies that she'll do whatever it takes to make it up to him, asking daily what he desires. Next, we see Ikki starting his morning training routine. Stella follows behind him and notices how exhausted he seems after the exercises. He explains that he usually runs 20 kilometers every morning, and asks if that would be tiring for her. Stella says there's no reason to accompany him, but he insists that this pace shouldn't be a challenge for someone like her. Still, he points out that although she has powerful magic that compensates for her lack of physical strength, that doesn't mean she doesn't need to train. She starts training immediately, asking him to leave her alone and assuring him she can keep up. Ikki comments that she's quite competitive and offers her his drink. Stella gets embarrassed, realizing that accepting would be like an indirect kiss, and he regrets offering, thinking she wouldn't accept. However, Stella says it doesn't bother her, and to his surprise, she takes the bottle and drinks. Then he also drinks from it, making his good mood clear. During the conversation, Ikki reveals that his younger sister will start classes that day, and it's been 4 years since he last saw her. Stella asks if they're only related by consideration, like in some manga, but he replies that they're siblings from the same parents. Stella then asks them to resume training. In a new scene, Professor Yuri Chung introduces herself to the class, mentioning that it's her first time leading this group. She informs them that there will be no regular classes that day, as they'll answer questions about what the director explained at the opening ceremony. Yuri explains that previously, the Academy selected participants for the 7 Stars Festival based on skill scores. However, starting this year, the selection will be made through a real battle in which all students must participate. The top 6 will represent the school in the tournament. According to her, this method is simple and fair. The matches will begin next week, and students will be notified by messages. When asked about the total number of battles, Yuri replies that there will probably be about 10. Each student will face several individual matches, and these duels will likely occur approximately every 3 days. Still, if someone decides not to fight, they can withdraw from the competition at any time without affecting their graduation. She reinforces that offering everyone a fair chance is truly valuable, and hopes this motivates students to participate with commitment this time. At the end of her speech, she wishes everyone good luck, but the emotion is so great that she gets a nosebleed and soon passes out. Ikki and Stella quickly take her to the infirmary. As soon as she wakes up, the professor apologizes for what happened, explaining that because it's the first day, she didn't want to give the impression of doing badly but couldn't avoid it. At that moment, Ikki comments to Stella that he feels he owes Professor Yuri something since she allowed his entry into the academy. Yuri, however, clarifies that it wasn't out of pity but because she recognized his ability, even after an extremely difficult last year. After that, Stella leaves the infirmary and asks Ikki what Yuri meant by mentioning it had been an unhappy year. He explains that he was referring to the period when he had no no classes since before their arrival, there were no fair criteria to evaluate skill scores. When he's about to continue explaining, a girl with glasses suddenly grabs his arm, creating an awkward situation. Someone demands to know who she is. The girl herself, equally surprised, says she's asking the same thing, claiming she doesn't know who he is. Soon after, she introduces herself as Kagami Kusakabe, saying they're classmates. Kagami confesses that she became a huge admirer of Ikki after watching his fight against Stella. Because of that, she's thinking of starting a journalism club and wants him to be the first big headline. Excited, she asks for an exclusive interview. At that moment, Stella congratulates Ikki on his sudden popularity on the first day of class and walks away. Ikki manages to free himself from Kagami's grip and starts following her. When he's about to catch up, he hears a familiar voice saying how relieved she was to finally find him. That's when Shizuku appears, the second best first-year student and his younger sister. He apologizes for not having looked for her before, explaining that he almost never takes that kind of initiative. Even so, he acknowledges that everything has changed since her enrollment. Without warning, Shizuku throws herself at him and kisses him. At that moment, Kagami's eyes sparkle, and she quickly pulls out her camera to capture the scene, already imagining the headline of the day. Meanwhile, Stella watches everything in complete shock. Still stunned, she demands that Ikki explain that behavior, but he remains frozen, not knowing how to react. Shizuku responds naturally, stating that siblings related by blood can kiss, saying it's normal and even common in some foreign countries where this type of kiss is seen as a greeting. Ikki asks his sister if that's really true. At this point, Stella intervenes, saying that in their country siblings don't act that way. Considering it inappropriate, Kagami agrees, stating that it's not a common practice anyway. Even so, Ikki asks if his sister heard what the other said. Shizuku replies that it doesn't matter because their relationship is different, claiming they spent 4 years wishing to be together again. Hearing this, Ikki scolds his sister, reminding her that she's wrong and shouldn't express herself that way. Before Shizuku tries to kiss him again, Stella pushes her aside, taking charge of the situation. She then asks Ikki why he allowed that to continue. Soon after, he thanks her for getting him out of that embarrassing situation. Shizuku confronts Stella, asking why she interferes and interrupts a conversation between siblings. In response, Stella says that this type of behavior is inappropriate and embarrassing. Shizuku retorts that this is a decision between her and her brother, adding that a countryside princess without any connection to them shouldn't interfere. Stella then declares that she has a direct link with the protagonist, stating that he is her master and she is his servant. Hearing this, Ikki remembers that they both agreed to forget that agreement. However, Kagami has already heard the whole conversation and decides that it will be published in the school newspaper. Ikki tries to convince her to give up on the idea, but Stella says she doesn't see anything wrong with it, remembering that after the fight, he asked them to share the same bed. Shizuku asks her brother if that's true. He confirms, trying to explain that he was only referring to the bunk bed in the room, but it's already too late. Furious, Shizuku summons her weapon. Ikki tries to stop her, remembering that it's forbidden to use powers without authorization. Suddenly, he realizes that Stella has also summoned her weapon, ready to face his sister, trying to avoid a disaster. Ikki tries to intervene, but the threats from both force him to retreat. Shizuku then provokes Stella, calling her a princess without curves. Stella responds, saying that sounds like jealousy, retorting with an insult about Shizuku's body, calling her flat and unattractive. In a scene change, we see that both were punished by the director and given the task of cleaning the 27 bathrooms of the academy for an entire week. The director comments that they should be grateful not to have been expelled since fights are prohibited in public areas of the school. After hearing the sentence, Stella warns that she'll only accept Shizuku's forgiveness after the bathrooms are completely clean. Even so, Shizuku says that maybe it would be better if everything remained that way, keeping some distance from her brother since he could never truly understand her. Stella retorts, saying that if no one explains the situation, then there will never be an understanding of what's really happening. Shizuku admits that until then she had no idea how her brother felt, especially now that she realized that her own family started treating him as if he simply didn't exist. Soon after, this scene changes to a room where Shizuku's new partner, named Alice, is already waiting for her, showing concern about her delay. Then there's another scene change, showing Stella waiting for Ikki at the dormitory entrance when he returns. She scolds him for not having come to train her, saying she was waiting so they could practice together. Ikki explains that he imagined that after spending so much time cleaning bathrooms, she would be too tired to train. Taking advantage of the moment, Stella asks what Shizuku meant when she commented that he had been treated as if he didn't exist. Ikki confesses that he already intended to tell that story, but warns that it's something sad and even a little hard to hear. Later, we find out that Ikki's family descends from one of Japan's greatest warriors, and for several generations produced elite knights. However, because he was born with a very low level of magical power, he ended up being ignored and left aside. Even during family gatherings, there was never a chair reserved for him. Until one Christmas, he couldn't take that situation anymore and decided to run away, but ended up getting lost in a severe snowstorm. At that moment, he believed that would be a frustrating end to his life. That's when his grandfather appeared before him and saved him, not only physically but also with words that deeply marked him. From that point on, the protagonist decided that he wanted to to become a man like his grandfather, and one day be able to offer someone the same kind of support he received. With that goal, he decided to become stronger on his own, and enrolled in the Knight Academy. Even so, the members of the Kurogane family were not satisfied to learn that someone they considered a failure had become a knight. They pressured the school to create standardized evaluation requirements in classes, a measure adopted by the former director that practically guaranteed he wouldn't graduate. With the arrival of the new director, a new opportunity arose, although the protagonist believes that this type of persecution will continue to happen in the future. In another scene change, we see that the relationship between Alice and Shizuku is evolving positively. Shizuku feels comfortable enough to tell Alice everything that happened with her brother. She confesses that since she discovered how the family treated him, she decided she would give him all the affection and support that was lacking from their parents. Then she realizes that she may have opened up too much to someone she just met. However, Alice reassures her, saying they'll still spend a lot of time together and that she can trust him to express her feelings freely. After that, we see Ikki taking a bath when suddenly Stella enters the bathroom. She justifies her attitude, saying that a first-class servant must assist her master without needing permission. When Ikki questions this logic, she has no reaction but says he can act as he wishes. During the help, the top part of Stella's bikini falls off, which Ikki immediately notices. Stella becomes extremely embarrassed, and the next day the mood between them is still awkward. They continue with their usual training, and at the end, Stella informs him of her first battle, which will be against a third-year student. Ikki tries to share information about the opponent to help her devise a strategy, but she refuses to listen, stating that she sees these fights as preparation for real confrontations, where information isn't always available. Hearing this, Ikki comments that he finds it interesting how people can be so different, but admits that she carries something he had never noticed before. Taking advantage of the moment, Stella tries to invite him out during the day. However, the conversation is interrupted by a message from Shizuku, inviting her brother to go shopping. He accepts immediately. Later, we see Stella finding a way to join them. Soon after, the siblings appear together, accompanied by Alice. The protagonist's presence catches Alice's attention, who gets curious about the way he's dressed. Alice ends up causing a commotion and asks not to be looked at that way. Ikki asks if Alice is a man, to which he replies that biologically yes, but in his heart, he's a lady. Alice tries to use his charm to provoke the protagonist, but is interrupted by Shizuku, who accuses him of violating school rules again by using his powers to threaten someone. Next, they go to a cafe. Alice sits next to Shizuku while Ikki eats his ice cream. He notices that a bit of cream is left on Stella's face and removes it with his hand. Stella tries to do the same to get his attention, but ends up covering her whole face with cream. Ikki then suggests she find a towel to clean herself. Later, we find Ikki and Alice in the bathroom. He comments that he's surprised his sister talks so easily with Alice, since she usually doesn't make friends easily, much less with boys. Alice explains that this happens because, in a way, she's a girl. Soon after, Alice notices that there's a lot of noise outside and suggests they hide. At that moment, the shopping center where they were is invaded, and some armed men destroy the bathroom using their weapons. Alice reacts quickly and uses his special technique to go through the wall, escaping unharmed. Ikki asks about his ability, and Alice explains that he can control shadows and move through them. Then Alice and Ikki go to the shopping mall security room and contact the academy director. She informs them that the incident has already been reported by all media, and that the shopping center is completely surrounded by police. She also reveals that the criminals belong to an organization that targets blazers, demanding an absurd amount of money as ransom. Therefore, the academy grants official authorization for its students to use their powers. Still, she warns them not to take reckless actions, making it clear that any excessively risky behavior should be avoided. The scene changes, showing that Shizuku and Stella have been captured along with the other hostages. Despite the situation, Shizuku remains calm and devises a plan, advising Stella not to draw attention. However, when a mother and her children are threatened by one of the criminals and risk being killed, Stella can't stand still and decides to intervene. With that, her identity is immediately revealed. At that moment, she reaches the leader of the criminals and attacks him with all her strength, delivering a powerful punch. However, he responds using his special ability, known as crime and punishment. His right hand absorbs any attack received, while his left returns the impact against the aggressor. Being hit by her own blow leaves Stella extremely weakened. Taking advantage of this, the leader proposes to free the hostages if she humiliates herself, apologizing on her knees and without clothes. While Stella follows the instructions previously combined with the protagonist, Ikki and Alice remain completely hidden, watching everything attentively. Ikki tries to attack the leader to end it once and for all, but ends up being restrained. Alice then explains that they need to wait until Shizuku erects a barrier around the hostages, creating the perfect opportunity to act. As soon as Shizuku activates her water power and creates the barrier, the signal is clear. It's time. The protagonist goes into action and attacks the criminals, drawing their attention. The enemy starts shooting at him, but he activates his special ability, which allows him to analyze everything around him as if in slow motion. Thanks to this, he managed to cut off the leader's hand, preventing him from using his most dangerous techniques. The leader, already on the brink of defeat, tries to ask one of his companions for help, but soon it becomes clear that all the other criminals have have already been defeated by Stella. The two leaders then try to attack the protagonist together, but Alice intervenes and immobilizes them using his shadow technique. At that instant, an infiltrator among the criminals takes a woman hostage and threatens to kill her unless they obey orders. That's when Kirara appears, a mysterious boy who attacks the criminal and saves the hostages. Later, it's revealed that this boy is a student at the Knight Academy. He shows contempt for the way credit for victory is distributed, something Shizuku and Stella agree on for the first time. Even so, the protagonist thanks Kirara for saving everyone in that situation. Kirara, however, looks at him with disdain and announces that his next confrontation will be direct, making it clear that he hopes he won't run away like a coward. The next scene shows Stella in her confrontation against a veteran student who has a peculiar ability. He can protect himself from attacks and explode like a bomb when hit. Spectators doubt that Stella can win, especially after her previous defeat against an F-ranked knight. Still, that doesn't shake her. With confidence, she offers the opponent a chance to give up, stating that he would have no chance against her. After thinking for a few moments, the boy accepts defeat, securing Stella's victory. Later, we see Stella taking a bath while Alice and Shizuku wait for her in the locker room. As soon as she comes out, they comment that they heard everyone won their battles. At that moment, Kagami appears with her portable camera to ask some questions. Alice discovers that Kagami is part of the journalism club and gets excited about the idea of becoming friends, helping each other discover information and possible gossip. A dark aura begins to form around them, suggesting that dangerous secrets may come to light. After that, the protagonist appears in his apartment, carefully analyzing Kirara's battles. Stella arrives and notices that he's watching the same recordings. He explains that Kirara is known as the Hunter due to his fighting style based on attacks coming from the shadows. If Stella had faced Kirara, he believes she would have given up quickly since her style favors long-range combat, while Kirara's is focused on direct and stealthy confrontations. For Ikki, this style represents a great challenge. Noticing his attention, Stella admits she's worried and confesses that she simply doesn't want him to lose to Kirara. Later, Ikki leaves for afternoon training and finds Alice waiting for him outside the dormitories. She comments that she heard that this year there was a serious conflict between him and Kirara. The protagonist then explains that Kirara's family had connections with the former academy director and was looking for a reason to expel him. Back then, Kirara challenged him to a duel to prove who deserved to stay in school. Knowing the intentions behind it, Ikki refused the challenge. Even so, Kirara attacked him from behind, and Ikki was forced to endure the blows without reacting, as any attempt at defense could result in his expulsion. Hearing all this, Alice asks how much longer he would have endured so many injustices if things continued that way. The protagonist replies that sooner or later he would have to prove his strength, no matter how many years it took. Alice then expresses the wish that someone would appear in his life to protect and defend him when he needed it most. The next day, the confrontation between Ikki and Kirara approaches. The students are anxious and ask him to spend more time with them before the fight. Still, he prefers to wait in the locker room, reflecting on his strategy. At the entrance to the battlefield, the protagonist receives a message informing that the duel will be real with risk of death, and that by accepting, he cannot hold the school responsible. Soon after, a girl in a kimono congratulates him for having accepted without hesitation. He recognizes the girl as Piku, who confirms she's a temporary instructor recommended by the director. Suddenly, she hugs him and invites him to a special class, but the director appears and scolds her, demanding she return to her post. Finally, the confrontation begins. The spectators mock the situation, doubting the protagonist's victory. Kirara hides using camouflage, while Ikki attacks from all sides. Nervous, he almost loses control, but Stella's shout makes him regain his calm. Using his perfect vision, he sees through Kirara's ability, dodging all attacks. Desperate, Kirara gives up when he realizes he can't hit him. The protagonist is declared the winner, but decides to scare him by driving his sword near his groin, making Kirara faint from fear. Ikki also passes out from magical exhaustion. Later, he wakes up under medical care, with Stella sleeping by his side. When she wakes up, she scolds him for having put himself in danger. He emotionally thanks her, confesses his feelings, and kisses her on the cheek. Stella blushes, reciprocates, and the two hug happily, promising to reach the top together. Meanwhile, Shizuku hears everything from outside, but doesn't interrupt. Alice appears and hugs her, saying she also likes her. Later, Stella trains intensely, reflecting on everything that happened. We discover that she and Ikki started dating, but 2 weeks later, she shows irritation with his distance as his popularity grows. Ikki starts training other students, easily defeating some envious boys, who later apologize and ask him to be their teacher. Kagami records everything, planning to publish it online. The group grows quickly. Stella tries to approach by offering water, but Shizuku interrupts her. Confusion arises. Stella gets irritated and leaves. Later, the protagonist explains that he doesn't train her because she's already surpassed him, and that his style wouldn't be suitable for her. Stella understands, confesses her plans, and promises to train alongside him. Soon after, the girls appear showing off their swimsuits, and the environment seems to fill with brightness, as if small stars were forming around them due to the attention they attract. Despite that, when you look closely, you realize that they all look very beautiful. However, when the focus returns to Alice, the atmosphere around her seems heavier and darker. At that moment, we see that the boys who had challenged the protagonist are also at the pool, satisfied that they're now following his guidance. Hearing them, Ikki asks them not to overdo it, reminding them that they've only known each other for a few days. Then he instructs the boys to try to hold their breath underwater, explaining that the goal is to connect with their inner selves. This exercise would help them better perceive their own energy and also improve lung capacity. Meanwhile, Stella watches the training from a distance, through the protagonist's point of view, even knowing that he's busy. Still, she would like to spend more time alone with him. For this reason, she decides to try the proposed exercise, concentrating as much as possible. However, her attention is interrupted when Kagami approaches and asks her an unexpected question about how far she had gone with him. She is so surprised by the question that she ends up swallowing some water and loses focus. After recovering, she asks Kagami what she really meant. Then Kagami explains the situation, realizing that Stella is the protagonist's girlfriend. Stella tries to deny it at first, but Kagami ends up making her reveal the truth. After that, Kagami encourages her to be sincere and tell Ikki what she feels. Later, Stella goes looking for Ikki. We see Stella and the protagonist meeting under a fountain, enjoying that moment alone. Ikki decides to talk about their relationship and comments that he realized that since the beginning, they haven't done anything that couples usually do. Hearing this, Stella misunderstands and thinks he wants to break up, replying that she'll accept any decision he makes. This makes the protagonist realize that, once again, she understood everything wrong. He explains that he really likes her, that he feels like seeing her and kissing her, but he was afraid of seeming strange or intrusive, so he suggests that both say at the same time what they want at that moment. The two end up confessing that they want to kiss. When they arrive at the dormitories, it's clear that they're even closer than before. Soon after, they receive a message about the next battle, and are surprised to discover that they'll face members of the student council. In a scene change, we see Toka in combat against the protagonist. She uses her ability to move at the speed of sound and confuse the opponent, but the protagonist, watching carefully, manages to predict her movements and ends up winning. He stops her soon after she tries to attack him again for another reason. In another confrontation, Stella faces Sayo, who prepares to attack using his ability to make objects heavier by spinning them. Sayo underestimates Stella, but she proves that she doesn't occupy her position by chance, showing a level that almost no one in the school possesses. Stella manages to destroy Saijo's attack, yet he ends up winning anyway. The protagonist comments that the girl was injured. Hearing this, Shizuku offers to spend the night with him to take care of his injuries, getting too close, which makes Stella try to intervene. However, Shizuku responds that Stella shouldn't get involved because it's none of her business. Stella then affirms that she has a special relationship with him. At that moment, Alice asks the protagonist how much longer the situation would continue. He thinks Alice is referring to their relationship, but she reveals that she's noticed something strange for some time. About a week before, a girl had been following Ikki constantly. The protagonist exposes the situation and asks her to come out of hiding and say what she wants. Surprised, the girl ends up falling into the school's water fountain. After that, they need to take her to the infirmary, but she's extremely shy and can barely look the boys in the eyes. We discover then that her name is Ayatsuji, a third-year student. Hearing her surname, the protagonist realizes that she's the daughter of a renowned samurai, someone he used to cite as an example during his training. Ayatsuji asks about her father's health, explaining that he suffered an accident during a fight and was hospitalized. She shows pride in knowing that a man as strong as the protagonist admires her father. Then she confesses that she had been following Ikki because she didn't know how to start a conversation, always missing the chance. She then asks to start training, explaining that she's been practicing alone for a long time, but sees no progress in her technique. During a confrontation to evaluate her, the protagonist realizes that she hasn't evolved because she only imitates movements without understanding the foundation, and also because she no longer has her father's guidance. He explains that because she's a woman, her muscular strength works differently, requiring the use of other muscles to generate explosive power. As he approaches to correct her posture, he touches her legs, leaving Ayatsuji extremely nervous. They resume training, and the protagonist's corrections have an immediate effect. Ayatsuji gets very excited to see real improvements after so long training alone. Later, we see Stella lying on the bunk bed with the protagonist, commenting that although she understands the benefits of Ayatsuji's training, she still feels insecure. Ikki reassures her, saying she doesn't need to worry because she's the only person he wants. The next morning, we notice that Stella's endurance has improved considerably, to the point where she can keep up with the training pace. Afterward, he invites her to eat, an invitation she refuses at first, but ends up accepting without restrictions. The protagonist comments how curious this is, and Stella assures him that everything is fine, showing surprise at maintaining her good shape, even eating a lot. At that moment, a group of boys approaches and starts insulting Ikki, catching the protagonist's attention. Forced to intervene, Ikki decides to end the situation at that instant, asking them to stop. He makes it clear that his friend is visibly uncomfortable with what's happening. One of the boys, upon noticing the protagonist's reaction, pretends to act friendly and offers him a cup. However, at the exact moment he tries to drink, he's he's hit by a bottle, getting injured. An employee who witnesses the scene runs to call the authorities, but is interrupted by a blonde girl holding an umbrella that partially covers her face. Stella, on the other hand, was already taken by rage upon seeing the humiliation suffered by the protagonist, who had merely endured everything in silence, without reacting or fighting. However, the protagonist himself interrupts her and asks her not to worry, saying that the aggressor probably just slipped. Other boys start mocking him, claiming he's a man without pride. The boy who attacked earlier approaches again and spits directly in his face, making it clear that it wasn't an accident. The attitude makes Stella lose control, about to incinerate him right there. Once again, the protagonist stops her, explaining that facing such a coward would only lower them as knights. The group decides to leave, leaving the place calmly. Shortly after, a boy named Kanata congratulates the protagonist for having avoided the fight with that boy, one of the 8 aces of the academy. Then the umbrella girl named Misogi comments that if circumstances were different, the violent ones would have been forced to intervene. At that moment, it becomes clear that both Kanata and Misogi are part of the academy's student council. Kanata then offers to heal the protagonist using his most powerful ability. The protagonist starts wondering who those people really were and why they seem so bothered by everything. When he's about to explain the situation to Stella, both are interrupted by a message from the academy informing that the next fight would be against Ayatsuji. Upon reading the message, Stella falls silent and runs off in the opposite direction. The next morning, Stella leaves school, showing concern about the fact that the nurses hadn't shown up for training. Shizuku comments that maybe that was exactly what she wanted, since she seemed to show some jealousy of the nurses after what happened. During training, Ikki finds Alice and asks if she knows anything about Ayatsuji. Alice replies that Ayatsuji would have no chance of beating him just to collect a debt, suggesting that she certainly would be plotting something. The protagonist then shows the message he sent to Ayatsuji, scheduling a meeting in Building 11 early in the morning. Alice once again demonstrates that she's a step ahead and warns him to prepare, because it might be necessary to break ties with the nurses who might be planning to betray him. In a scene change, we see the protagonist meeting Ayatsuji on the building's terrace. She confesses that she heard about the promise made between him and the princess, where both swore to reach the end of the 7 stars. Then she asks what would happen if he faced a much stronger rival before the final. Without hesitation, the protagonist replies that he would fight fairly, because only then would he have no regrets in the future. Ayatsuji, however, replies that fairness doesn't always lead to victory. Suddenly, her ability activates, and Ayatsuji throws herself from the top of the building in front of the protagonist. Without thinking twice, he jumps after her to save her during the fall. To ensure a safe landing, he's forced to use his special ability, Itu Shura. The impact opens a huge hole in the building, leaving a visible mark of his desperate action. Already on solid ground, Ayatsuji approaches, and the protagonist finally understands the true intention behind the nurse's attitudes from the beginning. The plan was to provoke him into using his final ability before the fight, preventing him from using it again and putting him at a clear disadvantage in the confrontation. He then asks why she would abandon her pride as a knight and show herself so desperate to win. Ayatsuji replies that she doesn't care what he thinks because she needs to win at any cost. The excessive use of the ability leaves the protagonist almost unconscious. Later, we see Stella sleeping and talking in her sleep, apparently dreaming about the protagonist in a quite embarrassing situation. She ends up waking up when the protagonist passes out on her chest. Although still drowsy, she believes she's dreaming. After calling him several times, she realizes that something is really wrong. The next morning, the protagonist wakes up scared in the infirmary, worried that he missed the fight time. Stella reassures him, saying there are still 3 hours until the confrontation. At that moment, the director appears in the room to investigate the incident in Building 11, suspecting the protagonist's involvement. He takes responsibility and states that he'll accept any punishment, but refuses to reveal who was with him. Then he asks about a colleague named Ayatsuji. The director explains that Ayatsuji's father, known as the Last Samurai, was seriously injured in a battle against Kuraishi, in a duel where the winner would take all the defeated's possessions. After this fight, Ayatsuji's father remained unconscious for 2 years, causing her to lose not only her home but also her father. In a new scene, we see Ayatsuji by her father's side, remembering how he was repeatedly humiliated by Kuraishi in the past. Because of that, she wishes to reach the end of the 7 stage to face him and take revenge. The protagonist is deeply shocked to hear this whole story, realizing that Ayatsuji lost everything she had, being pushed to the limit. He observes attentively the unfolding of the events and warns that cornered people are capable of anything. Faced with this, Ikki asks Stella to be careful from that moment on. Before the fight, the protagonist decides to accompany someone to a nearby location because there are still some matters he needs to resolve. Shortly after, we discover that Professor Yuri will be responsible for supervising the protagonist's combat. She shows great excitement and seems determined to make the battle even more intense. For this, she brought several blood books, using them to stay awake and conscious until the end of the confrontation. At that moment, Ayatsuji enters the arena. Upon seeing the protagonist arriving on his own, she's clearly surprised, believing he would still be unconscious due to the excessive use of his ability earlier. Because of this, everyone starts getting curious to discover exactly exactly what the nurse's technique is, since the protagonist won several battles alone using only a sword. Thus, the protagonist's chances end up varying according to the abilities Ayatsuji decides to use. As soon as the fight begins, the protagonist tries to attack Ayatsuji, but notices something strange when he realizes that his body seems without energy. When trying to approach from another angle, she quickly retreats to analyze the situation. While he remains on alert, he ends up being isolated again, which leads him to conclude that she's using a typical nurse's ability, capable of creating portals that close as soon as they're activated. However, for this to work, the portals need to have been previously positioned on the battlefield. Faced with this, the confrontation moves to hand-to-hand combat, and the protagonist ends up being hit again by the nurse's techniques, falling into a carefully prepared trap. Alice, watching everything, accuses the girls of cheating. They in turn reply that this is part of real combat, and that these tactics can be extremely useful. They are not disqualified at that moment, and then it's revealed that Stella accompanied the protagonist to the location to meet Professor Yuri. It becomes clear that the protagonist was already aware that Ayatsuji would cheat, but asked the professor to ignore this detail because there was an important reason for it. For this reason, even though it was evident that something was wrong, the fight continued without interruptions. Still, the battle was far from over, even with everyone noticing the use of questionable methods. Over time, the protagonist's true objective begins to reveal itself. He wants to recover the nurse's pride. For this, he starts demonstrating that he always knew Ayatsuji's techniques. He begins to dodge attacks with extreme precision, exhibiting impressive skill. This ease ends up panicking Ayatsuji, causing her to consume almost all her energy. Still, one last attack remains. The protagonist clearly manages to predict her intentions and hits her, removing her from combat. However, he doesn't finish the fight cruelly, showing mercy as proof that he still wants to continue being her friend. Finally, he states that he will allow her to recover everything she lost. Stella then asks if it's true that Ayatsuji's father was devastated after facing Kureishi that day. The question deeply shakes Ayatsuji, who replies that if it weren't for Kureishi, she and her father would still be living happily. Stella says she understands that feeling, but suggests that maybe it's not exactly like that. She remembers that Ayatsuji's father was known as a legendary swordsman called the Last Samurai. Ayatsuji is surprised, recognizing that she behaved in the worst possible way. In silence, Ikki extends his hand and says that friends don't need a reason to help each other. Amidst tears, she accepts, remembering how she had been harsh with him before. In a scene change, we discover that Kureishi is, in truth, a common third-year student at the academy. He has a peculiar hobby, visiting other academies and destroying martial arts schools scattered around the city. Additionally, he stood out as a finalist in a prestigious 7 Stars tournament, being feared as the swordsman killer. After these events, the protagonist receives extremely surprising information. When Kureishi faced Ayatsuji's father, he didn't use his special ability at any moment. Next, we see the group arriving at the old house that belonged to the Ayatsuji family. Their goal is to challenge Kureishi to a duel whose prize will be the recovery of the family's property. The Ayatsuji family doesn't waste time, promising to recover the house and the family's school. Kureishi boasted about Ikki's lack of courage back at the restaurant, but Ikki said that this time it was different. He reminded Kureishi that place used to be a martial arts school, and that as a master, if Kureishi gave permission, they could face each other. Kureishi laughed, agreed, and said that Ikki needed to prove he was up to it. Kureishi drew a deadly sword that could transform into various forms. The fight began with Kureishi charging forward, but Ikki managed to defend himself. However, Kureishi was too fast, attacking non-stop, and Ikki was in a hurry to dodge and try to counterattack. Kureishi turned his sword into a snake form made of bones and went all out, flying at Ikki. Even using his perfect vision, Ikki was fighting for his life to hold off Kureishi's attacks. Kureishi boasted about being the first to reveal his ability called Against Marginal. After the first round, they came at Ayatsuji from both sides, but Ikki managed to defend himself with some crazy dodges. Kureishi switched to 4 directions. Ikki got all confused and almost took a fatal blow. They continued the duel, and Ayatsuji was desperate to intervene, but Stella said that if she entered the fight, her family wouldn't recover the house or the school. Stella also said that Ikki was enjoying the fight, trying to figure out how to beat Kureishi. While the fight was happening, Ayatsuji realized that her father's defeat wasn't due to weakness. Watching Ikki in the adrenaline of battle, she imagined that her father must have felt that same emotion in his last fight, and remembered him apologizing for being that way, even though he enjoyed the battle. Ayatsuji finally understood what her father had said. She even shed some tears. She realized that she still wasn't a true swordswoman, that she wasn't truly connecting with the whole fighting thing. Meanwhile, Stella noticed Kureishi's weakness, seeing that he was exhausting himself with that movement he was using. Ikki was determined, saying he hates losing and was enjoying the battle too much to to end it quickly. He promised Ayatsuji that he would avenge her father and went after Kureishi with a technique he had learned from Kaido, the Tenimuho. This style that Kaido himself had tried to use before, but without success. Ayatsuji was impressed with Ikki using that technique, and Stella even revealed that she had trained with it too. Kureishi, after taking some hits, wanted to know who Ikki was and proposed to continue the fight at the 7 Stars Sword Art Festival before leaving and giving the place to Ikki. After the battle, Ayatsuji apologized for not having realized before what it meant to be a true swordsman, but Ikki said it wasn't her fault. He said he only won because he learned Kaido's technique and that she was her father's true successor. Together, they decided to rebuild her father's martial arts school. Later, Stella told Ikki that Ayatsuji had admitted to cheating in their match to the selection committee and would be suspended for 10 days to learn her lesson. They thanked her for taking responsibility. Suddenly, Shizuku and Alice appeared, having been listening to everything hidden. Stella made up a story to disguise it, and the conversation changed direction. In the next battles, Ikki continued winning all of them, 12 straight without losing one. Everyone was impressed, calling him the next big thing. The director saw his and Stella's potential and sent them to a training camp in Okatama to better prepare. Stella got all excited about the trip and thanked the director. On the way to the camp, they passed through some cool places, leaving her even more excited. Meanwhile, Shizuku was upset at the subway station, trying to convince Alice to go with her, but he had other plans and gave her support to be strong. At the camp, Stella enjoyed her time with Ikki, even tried to kiss him, but he cut it off when he saw some student council members arriving. After arriving at the lodging, Stella and a guy named Renren had an intense badminton match using magical powers. They were playing for a long time, but still remained tied. Everyone watching was a bit confused because it didn't look like a normal badminton game. Ikki asked Kanata, the white lady, why they were there, and she explained that they were helping the student council. Ikki was shocked, his mouth wide open, realizing that he and Stella had been tricked by the director. Later, Stella was forced to clean the camp floor, and the umbrella lady explained that the real training camp would only start in a month, so everyone had to help with the cleaning. Stella regretted having come and realized that working on the student council was more boring than she thought. While everyone was cleaning enthusiastically, Stella began to see the council members in a different light, noticing the responsibilities they had. Kanata revealed that they only asked the director for extra help, and he sent Ikki and Stella. After the boring cleaning, Stella and Ikki decided to take a walk to the waterfalls to cool off. There, they told the council members about the plan, and Renren teased, saying that Ikki actually wanted to be alone with Stella to have some fun. As they climbed a steep mountain, Stella got tired, and Ikki asked if she was okay, remembering that she had only eaten 2 bowls of ramen that day instead of the 7 she usually ate. She said she was fine, and they continued climbing. Meanwhile, Shizuku arrived home and was warmly greeted by her cat. She found childhood photos of Ikki in her room, which made her happy. Her happiness, however, was interrupted when her father called her for a serious conversation in the living room. Back at the camp, Stella's condition worsened considerably, and she became increasingly tired and sick. Ikki took care of her and suggested returning to the camp if she didn't improve. Stella was dizzy and nauseated, even asking in horror if the kiss they had could have gotten her pregnant. Ikki reassured her, explaining that wasn't possible, questioning whether she was being naive or just joking. He thought she might have caught a cold, but Stella insisted that she had never been sick like this before and that her body wasn't cooperating. Before he could take her back to the camp, the training began. So he took her to a mountain lodge. Ikki continued taking care of Stella and checked if she had a fever, confirming that she was hot, looking like a furnace. After comforting her, they talked about their relationship, and Ikki expressed his desire to tell his parents with pride. At that moment, they were interrupted by a concerned call from the council members, who explained they were at a mountain lodge waiting for the rain to pass. Without them knowing, an unknown observer was watching, reporting their location by phone. Meanwhile, at Shizuku's house, the tense conversation with her father continues. She decides to leave and says she only came because of her mother's messages, but then her father reveals that he was the one who wrote the messages pretending to be her mother because he knew she wouldn't respond if it were him. Shizuku asks what he wants, and he says he's worried about her. He says he's proud because she won all 12 selection matches and believes she'll represent the school at the 7 Stars tournament. But she doesn't care and asks why he doesn't care that Ikki is also doing well in the matches. Then she leaves back to the mountain lodge. Ikki hears a strange noise and goes out to see a giant made of rocks attacking the lodge. He runs back to protect Stella, carries her to a safe place, and returns to face the rock giant. He summons his sword and attacks the monster, but it splits into small rock monsters, making the fight difficult. The monsters head towards Stella. At that moment, Renren arrives arrives and rescues Stella, passing her to Ikki. The rest of the student council arrives and starts fighting the rock monsters. Ikki thinks the monsters are being controlled by a magic knight. Kanata appears and explains that this must be the work of someone using the wire ability. He says people with this ability use magical strings to control things like these rocks. Suddenly, the student council president Toka also arrives and joins the fight. She explains that no matter the distance of the steel wire, they're all connected by the same powers as the monster, so it's traceable. Toka uses her lightning cut attack and destroys the rock monsters. Ikki is shocked by her power. Toka is one of the 4 finalists from last year and the strongest in the academy. Meanwhile, Shizuku receives a message saying that her next opponent in the 7 Stars battle will be Toka, and she finds it a bit funny. The following week, Shizuku takes a trip down memory lane, remembering her childhood. She remembers how adults forgave mistakes if the person had power, but her brother Ikki never bowed to that. This inspired her to be strong, even without knowing the loneliness he endured, ignored by his family. Determined to follow his footsteps, she promises to defeat Toka at the 7 Stars Sword Art Festival. During lunch, Ikki, Stella, and Alice discuss Toka's powers after reading an article about her. Alice asks Ikki about Toka, but he says he didn't have much time to talk to her and only saw a little of her power in a fight against a stone monster. Even so, it was enough to confirm that she's very powerful. Stella is worried that Shizuku might lose, but Alice comforts her, saying she's been preparing with simulated battles against veterans who use lightning. Alice explains that Shizuku's ability to control high-level magic allows her to create ultra-pure water that doesn't conduct electricity, which counters the natural disadvantage of water against lightning. Even so, Ikki is worried about Shizuku. Although he wants her to win, he doesn't want her to put so much pressure on herself. Later, Shizuku shares her feelings with Alice, expressing her love for Ikki and her desire to be strong to help him. She promises to show her strength in the next fight and prove herself. The battle between Shizuku and Toka begins in the arena. They face each other, and the commentator announces that Toka is number 1 on the ranking list. Toka boasts about her speed, saying no one can escape her, and her golden lightning attack hits the opponent in the blink of an eye. Shizuku summons her sword first, and Toka follows, summoning her thunder sword. Meanwhile, Shizuku remembers her childhood and her love for her brother, determined to win. For a while, neither of them moves, just staring at each other, confusing the audience and commentators. The instructor Sei, supervisor of the fight, explains that they're both waiting to see who moves first, since both have potential to be champions of the 7 Stars. But a careless move could be fatal. Ikki knows that Shizuku doesn't want to attack first, because Toka is deadly in hand-to-hand combat. He explains to Stella that Toka's technique is so powerful that she earned the nickname Curved Oh How, a super electromagnetic soul-drawing technique. In the past, Toka used this technique to defeat many opponents. Shizuku creates an ice barrier to protect herself, but Toka quickly avoids it and counterattacks from a distance, as Shizuku predicted. Toka summons a giant wave, dodging Shizuku's water shots with her thunder sword, counterattacking the wave. She continues attacking, and her speed becomes evident. Ikki explains to Stella that for Shizuku to maintain her wave technique, she needs to generate ultra-pure water, while Toka just needs to keep attacking with lightning. Suddenly, Shizuku uses ice to trap Toka and launches an attack, leaving the audience applauding the epic battle. Toka wonders how Shizuku managed to counterattack and trap her in ice, since it's impossible for Shizuku to see through the control of her magical power. In the blink of an eye, Toka approaches and sends a rain of attacks that Shizuku barely dodges. Toka attacks again and hits Shizuku, hurting her badly, but actually she hit her water shadow. Even so, the impact hurts. The fight continues and Shizuku can't predict Toka's movements, staying at a disadvantage. Everyone is confused because the battle is no longer balanced and Shizuku can only defend with difficulty now. Ikki explains to Stella that Toka's technique called Anushi hides the opponent's existence from the unconscious mind. He remembers that instructor Sei did this to him and says that even if Shizuku's eyes see Toka's movements, her mind doesn't recognize them as important and ignores them. Suddenly, Sei appears and confirms everything. She explains that the technique is a mix of stealth steps and breathing techniques from ancient martial arts. The director also appears and asks how Ikki recognized Toka's technique. He says he was surprised that a student could do the same as his. The director reveals that they both learned from the same knight, known as the god of battle Nango. Sei gets embarrassed and curses the master, but the director sends her away. The director tells Ikki that he should know that Shizuku can't overcome Toka's special technique. He agrees and thinks Shizuku needs a new strategy to win in hand-to-hand combat, or she'll lose. Determined to show how much she loves Ikki, Shizuku decides to go beyond her limits and goes on the attack using her water blades. With everything, Toka counterattacks, and the two fight on equal terms for a while. The fight becomes more intense, and Shizuku creates a magical ice field to move better and attacks Toka using water shadows in the mist. Toka has difficulty moving while Shizuku uses her special water blade technique, but then Toka sends her definitive lightning attack and knocks down Shizuku. Despite all her efforts, Shizuku loses the fight and is taken to the hospital. When she wakes up, she sees Stella, Alice, and Ikki waiting for her, worried. Realizing she lost, she asks everyone to leave, saying she's she's tired. They leave, but Ikki and Stella watch from outside. Alice tells Stella that Shizuku has become very strong and comforts her, hugging her and praising her for doing well. He says he watched until the end and that she doesn't need to be so hard on herself. Shizuku hugs back and cries, releasing her emotions. In the following days, Stella wins a total of 14 fights. After each battle, she and Ikki take quiet walks in the forest, discussing the fights in a relaxed way. The next day, Ikki thinks about his grandfather's words and Toka's dedication to taking care of needy children, giving them courage. He looks at his empty, worthless sword, thinking about what to do next. Toka receives Sei and apologizes for having called her. She asks if Shizuku knew that her next opponent was Ikki. Shizuku confirms that she knew and is worried about the Federation's dubious methods. She heard he wasn't well, but believes he'll fight with everything to beat her. Toka adds that she can't cut corners when facing him and needs to fight him with heart and soul. She asks Shizuku if she's going to ask Ikki to give up the battle. Shizuku says she needs time to think, and later asks Alice if she should stop Ikki from fighting. Alice says only she can find the answer, being the only one Ikki trusted, understanding his strong determination since the previous battle. Shizuku questions whether she'll be proud to go to the national championship after this fight, winning by default if Ikki gives up, or winning if he shows up. Toka remembers that the combat may be rigged by some adults on the ethics committee to satisfy their own interests, and says she should fight in a way that she's proud of. Meanwhile, Stella practices her own battle. Later, they announce the school's final event with 6 fights in different places, where the winners would earn tickets to the 7 Stars Festival. While everyone was super anxious about the fight between Ikki and Toka, which would be on TV, the director and Sei were talking about the next fight, thinking that the Federation had arranged for Toka to be his opponent, which kind of forced him to win. Then, out of nowhere, the legendary god of battle, Nango, appears, catching Sei by surprise and leaving her annoyed. They discuss a bit, and the director asks if he came to see Toka. Nango says that although Toka is his favorite student, he came to see Ikki because he's from a Korean family. Sei arrives and says the fight could be cancelled. The announcement says that Ikki hasn't arrived yet, and if he doesn't show up in 15 minutes, Toka will be the winner. The director asks Sei why Ikki hasn't arrived yet, since he promised that the Federation would bring him. Sei shrugs and says there must have been a misunderstanding, that when he went to pick up Ikki, he had already left alone. He laughs maliciously and says Ikki must be fine, unless he passed out on the way. Meanwhile, all tired, Ikki thinks about his grandfather's words and wonders if it was a bad idea to live by the motto of never giving up, always surpassing his abilities. He wonders how he can defeat Toka when no one believed in him, and says that's why he ended up with a weak sword. At that moment, Shizuku finds him and hugs him, saying she doesn't want him to fight Toka, but that she also won't stop him. She just wants to see him happy and smiling for everyone, including the students he trained, the student council members, Eureka the reporter, and himself. Shizuku reminds Ikki that he inspired everyone and that they dream through him, and that he's not alone. Finally, he sees Stella, who appears excited and shows the medal she won for winning her battles and finally having the chance to participate in the 7 Stars Festival, as they had promised before. With new determination, Ikki decides to participate in the battle and arrives at the arena. Toka and Ikki enter the battlefield while everyone is super anxious, waiting for the fight to start. Toka apologizes to Ikki, saying she's been super excited to fight him since she first saw him. Ikki feels the same and promises not to embarrass her or those who supported him. They draw their swords and the final battle begins. Ikki starts attacking and uses his supreme technique, Itu Shura, right off the bat, shocking everyone. Stella, calm as always, believes he chose to fight head-on without tricks. Toka realizes that if she can dodge his attacks now, she'll win the battle. Ikki is weaker than Toka, but tries his hardest to land a perfect hit. Toka prepares to counterattack with her supreme lightning cut attack, but Ikki summons his 7th sword and hits her before she can react. She falls to the ground, and Ikki wins, leaving everyone shocked. Nango asks if Toka let him win on purpose, but Sei explains that Toka used all her power to counterattack, and Ikki went beyond his limits to beat her. Sei suggests giving an intense name to Ikki's new technique, something like Crusher, like a demon or monster. Sei doesn't believe it and complains that it's impossible, trying to do something to undermine Ikki's success. But the director tells Sei that it's too late because Ikki has proven himself, and no one can deny his victory now. While Ikki fights not to pass out, Sei tries to attack him, but Stella defends him and faces Sei for challenging him in that condition. She runs to Ikki, expressing her love for him exactly as he is. Ikki realizes that Stella's warmth is what saved him and asks if she would be his family. She accepts and agrees to be his fiancée. Everyone applauds Ikki and Stella, and Shizuku accepts the reality of their relationship. Meanwhile, Itsuki receives a call from the Emperor of Vermillion, Stella's father, who informs him that he found out about Ikki's marriage proposal to Stella. Itsuki apologizes, but the Emperor says that his children should stay away from adult schemes and wishes them happiness. Later, the winners of the selection for the 7 Stars Festival are announced: Ikki, Kanata, Alice, Stella, and 2 other girls. They will represent the school at the festival. The director calls Toka to the stage and announces Ikki as the new president, and everyone applauds him as their leader. She says how proud she is of him, and Ikki congratulates Toka on her progress. Toka encourages him to carry the hopes of those who lost and reached the top of the 7 Stars tournament with the school's flag. He promises to do that. Later, Ikki confesses to Stella that he used to think he didn't care what others thought as long as it was good for him, but now he realizes he'll value opinions from time to time, like magazine criticisms and the way Sei dealt with him. And so the anime ends. That was the anime. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the most underrated underdog stories in anime, where an F-rank failure becomes the strongest through sheer grit and a little help from a princess who can't stop blushing, then you need to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for Curious Nerd right now. We break down the smartest strategies, the most satisfying glow-ups, and everything in between. Drop a comment telling me your favorite moment from this series. Smash that like button if you ever felt like the underdog. Thanks for watching, and remember, even the biggest loser can become a legend if they refuse to stay down. See you in the next one.